right, in the opening for this council meeting tonight, I will do the Indigenous land acknowledgement. As the City of Winkler, we acknowledge that we are situated on Treaty 1 land and home of the Anishinaabe, Cree, Oji Cree, Dakota, and Dene peoples, and the homeland of the Métis Nation. We respect the treaties that have been made on these territories. We acknowledge the harms and mistakes of the past, and we dedicate ourselves to the future based on respect of all people, including the Indigenous communities, in a spirit of reconciliation and collaboration, moving forward to a harmonious, prosperous future together. Be it resolved that the agenda for the regular council meeting of May 24th, 2022 be adopted. Mover?
Henry Siemens.
And do we have a seconder?
Marvin.
Thank you, Marvin. And are there any additions or changes to the agenda? Hearing none, all in favor? And that is carried. Be it resolved that the minutes of the regular council meeting of May the 10th, 2022 be adopted. Mover?
Don.
Seconder?
Karina.
Thank you. Are any errors or omissions on those minutes? Hearing none, all in favor? And that is carried. We have no correspondence per se today, so we will go right into the Finance Department. Be it resolved that the accounts payable in the amount of $1,942,080.72 as approved by the Finance Committee be approved for payment. Mover?
Henry Siemens.
Seconder?
Andrew?
Any questions regarding that? The check registers are there.
Why do we keep paying Airbnb?
Yeah. There's two of them, like in
It's
April and May.
for the police department training, I believe it is.
Oh,
in
they stay in
Toronto.
Airbnb instead
Yep.
of? Oh, okay.
Or, sorry, in Winnipeg for our new recruits.
Okay.
I believe that's correct?
That is correct, yes.
Okay, thank you. All right, any other questions? Hearing none, all in favor? And that is carried. Be it resolved that the financial statement report for April 2022 be received for information. Mover?
Henry Siemens.
Seconder?
Andrew?
Any questions regarding the financial statement or the financial report?
Nope.
Okay.
Thank you, well done.
Okay, all in favor then? That is carried. What I usually look for is the numbers at the end to see how close to 25% they are, and then I can tell who's over and
Yeah.
who's under.
Yeah.
And
Well,
I
there's
appreciate your recap of the specialized payments or receipts, so that we can kind of use that as an offset to where our actual percentage positions are. Usually fairly easy to follow.
Yeah, the snowfall this spring
It
brought
fell.
a few lines out of balance, but overall it's okay.
Well, I understand that our next snowfall is on back order till January.
Hopefully.
Okay, all in favor? And that is carried. Okay, we have a resolution that we are introducing, and we're asking some area councils to introduce this to their council as well. And we all need to have this done by June the 1st so that we can actually submit it to AMM. So I will read the resolution. Whereas nearly 60% of all public infrastructure in Canada is owned and managed by the municipal government, yet municipalities only collect about 8% of every tax dollar paid in Canada. And whereas water and wastewater investments are critical to continued economic development opportunities, whereas the province and federal government disproportionately receives added revenue through continued economic development, and whereas municipal governments have limited options for funding long-term infrastructure investments through property taxes, utility rates, or user fees. Therefore, be it resolved that the AMM lobby the provincial and federal governments for increased grant funding proportionate to the total investment in water and wastewater infrastructure to continue to facilitate economic growth within the province of Manitoba. Do you have a mover
I will move.
and a seconder?
Sure, I'll help.
Okay, thanks, Andrew. Discussion, any questions regarding that resolution?
This is like the gas type funding is something that has been fantastic for municipalities over the years, and as FCM board member, I have supported and pushed for this, and been very happy that last year it was doubled, and some other years we've slowly, incrementally got that part better. It was indexed, and then it became permanent. And at first, I think the first shot it was just maybe an election thing the first time when it came through, but it was very popular, and it's something that we need. We need consistent funding, and so this is very important.
So my question to Councillor Platt is, we're going to Regina at the beginning of June, and we're eagerly anticipating the announcement that the gas tax will again be doubled this year. Is that a possibility?
Well, the Prime Minister will
Wow.
probably speak, so he may. It is in my
Wish list?
my re-election campaign speech. Is
Oh, right on.
reference to it, so it's important, definitely.
Oh,
Yeah,
yeah.
so something that gives us an ability to plan ahead and save if we need to save for some
Yeah.
projects, and
Yeah,
so.
and we always do, right?
Yeah.
But,
Yeah.
it's always nice to go to this candy store when you know there's candy being handed out.
That is true.
But it also, that first sentence makes you wonder,
Yeah.
I'd like to see that federal budget details.
Yeah,
Exactly.
Where do they spend all their money? But
yep, yeah. Well, I mean, as you can see, our access to funding is so limited, and that's why it makes it so difficult when we have a situation where a tender comes in so much higher than what the original agreed number is, and then only to have to look at funding it ourselves. So that is the reason why this resolution is here, and we'll be going to AMM for our Central District meeting coming up middle of June. And the municipalities who have responded so far have all been in favor of doing this and eagerly wanting to put it through as a resolution through our Pembina Valley Reason Mayors Group, as well as the individuals that are close by here, so.
Good.
Okay, any other questions? Hearing none, all in favor? And that is unanimously approved. You need to add that for sure. Be it resolved that the Finance Committee minutes for May the 18th, 22 meeting be adopted. Mover?
Henry Siemens.
Seconder?
Andrew?
Thank you. Any questions regarding the Finance Committee meeting? Hearing none. All in favor? And that is carried. Be it resolved that the travel and accommodations expense policy be adopted. Mover?
Henry Siemens.
Seconder?
Andrew?
And for the media, the only change we made there is instead of identifying spouse, we identified family members. So that's the only change from maybe what you have seen before. I just want to make that clarification.
But it's also the mileage
Yeah,
piece,
there's
right?
And the
Also-
mileage rate's in there
Yep.
too. Yep.
Mhm.
And that's in adjustment to what's currently in place and have a standard which we could follow going forward.
That's correct.
All right, any other questions? Hearing none, all in favor? And that is carried. Next one, it's an exciting one to join in a regional handy van project, and we received a invitation from Morden Community Handy Van because there are a lot of trips that come to Winkler from Morden, also servicing some of the Winkler residents, so they're wondering if we would be willing to grant them some support. So this resolution makes it clear, and the only thing I would add onto the resolution, if we could do so, David, is when you talk about the $5,000 in 2023 to the Morgan Community Handy Van, which will include a decal or logo. I just would like that in the minutes as well, because that's what they're agreeing to. So the resolution kind of would be it resolved that City of Winkler agrees to donate $2,500 in 2022 and $5,000 in 2023, including a van logo to the Morden Community Handy Van. That make sense?
Mhm.
Do I have a mover?
Marvin?
Thank you, Marvin, and a seconder.
Karina.
Michael.
Oh, Michael can have
Okay,
it.
Michael, thank you. And any further comments or questions?
I think this is going to be money well spent, and I think the partnership is really good. It's an efficient use of our joint resources, so I'm very pleased to see this.
And I understand also that they were the recipient of a grant, community services, community builders grant? Building Sustainable Communities, thank you, Scott, for the purchase of a new van, so it's
Good.
great to see that.
Mhm.
All right, all in favor? And that is carried. Be it resolved that MSTW Planning District audited financial statements for 2021 be received for information. Mover,
Don.
seconder.
Andrew?
Any questions regarding the audit statements? Good job, looks like good revenue coming in.
Good revenue coming in. We had a very good year last year. Jim Smith did a formula to determine what each municipality participating in MSTW was going to receive. And there's some metrics to that, and yeah, it was a very good year for us. The first quarter of this year was slow, and I believe that it's probably from the weather. Really stalled a lot of building projects, but beginning of May, the phone was ringing off the hook and everybody wanted to start going, so it looks like it's gonna be a decent year again.
Okay, all right, thanks, Don. Thanks for serving, Don and Andrew. And this is a nice one here too. Be it resolved that MSTW Planning District 2022 surplus revenue allocation be received for information. And following that, we have the information regards to the percentage of splits. Morden gets 25%. This is all based on the number of building permits and revenue generated at 32,974. Stanley is at 18%, 24,354. Thompson 2% for 2,943. Winkler 55% for 74,310. So kind of gives you the split of the revenue that comes into the MSTW Planning District. So with that,
We should
mover?
have- oh,
Sorry. Oh, go ahead.
Nope.
Okay, mover,
Don.
Don, seconder,
Andrew?
Andrew, thank you. And discussion, Henry?
Nope. Glad to see it. I felt we were moving on without.
Oh,
the
no,
mover.
no, no, we're not moving on.
I didn't want to let that one slide.
No, we'll take this. All right, thanks, Henry. All in favor? And that is carried. Police, transportation, waste. Next one is the Swamp Board. Be it resolved, the Swamp Board minutes for the May 11th meeting be received for information. Mover?
Michael?
Thanks, Michael. Seconder?
Andrew?
Thank you, Andrew. Any highlights from Swamp that you want to highlight, or?
They're
Oh, go ahead.
staying busy, go for it.
What does the SRM stand for?
Where are you looking at that?
It
They
says the
agreeing
Brent
to
updated
take
board on
their-
plans to accept SRM material.
I can't remember what it stands for, OVAL. Of some
Oh,
sort.
right.
Yeah.
Oh, probably swine refuse material.
I think this one happens to be from Carmen, right?
Yeah, True North.
Oh,
Right.
okay. Yeah,
That's-
that's
So
the
that
red
right.
range plant or that meat
Yeah.
plant.
Okay, thank you. All in favor? And that is carried. Be it resolved that the Planning Committee minutes for April 21st and May the 12th meetings be adopted. Mover?
Henry Siemens?
Seconder?
Don?
Any questions regarding any of those minutes, or? Hearing none, all in favor? And that is carried. Be it resolved that the bylaw number 2283-22, traffic parking bylaw be given second reading. Mover?
Don?
Seconder?
Michael?
Thank you. Any follow-up questions regarding that?
This is not different than what we discussed at committee meeting though, is it?
I don't think so.
Traffic and parking bylaw. Okay.
Okay, all in favor? And that is carried. Be it resolved that bylaw number 2283-22, traffic and parking bylaw be given third and final reading. Mover?
Marvin?
Seconder?
Michael?
Any further discussion?
I appreciate the reasoning behind it, so it helps to make it understandable.
Mhm.
Okay,
Yeah,
thank
a
you.
lot of work went into that.
Yep,
Yeah.
all in favor?
Faces there again.
And that is carried. Be it resolved that MSTW Planning District reports for April 2022 be received for information. Thank you.
Don?
Mover, Don, thank you.
Andrew?
Thank you. Any questions regarding those reports? Hearing none. All in favor? And that is carried. Be it resolved that Winkler Family Resource Center minutes for the April 25th, 2022 meeting be received for information. Mover?
Michael?
Seconder?
Karina?
Any questions? Hearing none. All in favor? And that is carried. Be it resolved that this meeting of council recess for the purpose of holding public hearings. Mover?
Marvin?
Seconder?
Karina?
All in favor? Carried. I will turn it over to David for public hearing conditional use CU 2022-003-355 Monarch Drive.
Before we start or continue with the public hearings, I'd just like to mention, if you like to speak regarding your public hearing, we ask you to step up to the mic so that also the people watching online can hear you. Please state your name and the address as well. So the first public hearing that we have is an application for a conditional use. As Martin mentioned already, application number is CU 2022-003. This is a public hearing that was started already on May 10th at the last council meeting, and we continue today on the 24th today. And the request is in order to allow cryptocurrency mining operations. It's subject to, because cryptocurrency mining is a conditional use in the M industrial zone. It's at 355 Monarch Drive. The applicant is Russ Duick, and the owner is Rightway Rentals and Radiators Limited. Russ Duick is here to speak on behalf of the application. Scott Taves is here as well to answer any questions for council. The report to council is attached as well. At this point, I would like to open the floor for any comments.
Okay, I'm Russ Duick. Is this thing on?
No. Is it?
Hello.
Doesn't sound like it, does it?
Doesn't sound like it.
Red light.
There you go.
And we're on.
There we are.
Okay. I'm Russ Duick on behalf of Rightway Rentals. Okay, so since our last public hearing 2 weeks ago, we have an updated report and we have had enough time to review it. I'm assuming you guys have as well. So that's good. I think I would like to go through each of the recommendations systematically, if that's okay with you guys. I don't think it'll take very long. The first condition has been changed and the update does no longer limit the power to use for this conditional use to 500 kVA, but rather to whatever hydro would approve, and as the details mentioned there below. So we're good with that. The second condition here for approval for a 5-year period, I would like to ask that we can have some discussion on that, or maybe that we could consider taking that out of this conditional approval. The battery might be dead here.
wait.
Yep.
Want to make sure that the public can hear it as well.
Okay. Can you hear me? There we go.
Yes, we can.
Thank you.
So a 5-year approval is quite challenging for us. I mean, this is not just a matter of plugging in some computers. It's a significant investment. And I would add to that that it's probably not just our investment. We wouldn't fill this entire space on our own. There's potential for investors here and likely a lot of local interest. We haven't gone to the market for that yet, but it makes it a very big challenge to try to propose something that can only be done for 5 years. The investment to get enough power or to move the equipment somewhere else on top of the initial startup cost is a challenge, but of course the time frame needed to pay back potentially millions of dollars requires more than 5 years. So I know this is a conditional use, and I would think that if it is a conditional use that the city's proposing, that we'd be prepared to do it for more than 5 years. I could see some reviews happening, and I think likely the major concern would be power. I think Manitoba Hydro will do its due diligence in that as time goes on. I don't know if it'll take them 3 years or 5 years or 10 years, but I think if there's significant issues with this type of power use, that would be dealt with through other courses as well. So I think that's the biggest one for us, is the 5-year approval makes it a big challenge. And I would think if there's future or past applications of the same nature, they would likely also have that same issue.
So can I ask Scott to weigh in regards to that requirement where there's flexibility? You wanna
You wanna let them get through the list and I can just respond,
Or are you gonna respond to all of them? Then we'll get mixed up.
I'm okay going through it each one if you want to respond now. Yeah.
I would appreciate that, because then
Okay.
you keep the relevant information together in the same issue.
Yeah, so in terms of the 5-year window, that's being proposed because we know that Manitoba Hydro and the province of Manitoba are actively working on regulations regarding cryptocurrency. And so it gives an adequate time for those regulations to be put in place, and that this development wouldn't be necessarily grandfathered. They'd be subject to whatever new regulations are put in place. We're kind of in that funny it's a relatively new thing to Manitoba, the amount of interest that is happening around large crypto investments, as far as where municipalities need to get involved. And not that the intent is to say at 5 years this can't happen. It's to say that it's considered a new application at that point, and you are now subject to whatever rules and regulations are in place in Manitoba. That's the intent behind the recommendation for the 5 years.
So is there any other wording that would fit in there that would make it clear it's subject to the province's regulations?
We could work on something off the cuff. I'll need to think about it a little bit.
In
Well,
which,
as long as-
in
sorry,
which
go
place you're considering instead of the 5 years, just
No,
until
just
there is
leave the 5 years there, but add a clause saying that it would be subject to renewal based on the province of Manitoba's regulation requirement. Because it's really not a city of Winkler issue, it's a
Right.
provincial issue, so somehow we have to have the province identified in there as, that is the reason it's only 5 years, so.
Right,
It's not that
yeah.
we're creating something. So if we say you guys work that part out on the wording, you know, maybe with the province or whatever, and is
in,
that okay?
Well,
Yep.
yeah.
I think changing the wording similar to what you're talking about is probably the right direction. We don't intend on taking advantage of being grandfathered into something. We don't know what those rules will look like in the future, as do, none of us do. As far as I understand, I would expect that there's likely gonna be rules that apply to, for example, us, if we were to start this now, whether or not the city puts a condition on it, you know, a 5-year. So I would kind of like to play by the rules that come up as they come up without having to reapply for a conditional use.
In which case, you're suggesting removing the 5 years to completely and just follow, and suggesting.
Yeah,
following
and I'm not
whatever the
opposed to
okay.
changing the wording on it. I'd like to remove the 5 years definitely, but if there's something that can give some confidence that the grandfathering issue wouldn't be, you know, something that the city's hands are tied, and well, I guess we gotta let them keep going. Like, we're not looking for that. We're looking to play by the rules, but to reapply for a conditional use and have that uncertainty on top of additional, the existing uncertainty about crypto in general, I think it would be nice to be able to take that 5-year out.
So if the 5 years was taken out, it just simply adds subject to compliance with provincial regulations?
Yes.
Would that be something workable, Scott?
I mean, it certainly could be.
Because that would be ongoing. It could be 2 years, it could be 3.
That's right.
Yeah.
It could be next year.
Yeah.
Sure.
I mean, certainly that could be something that works. Similar to a lot of our regulations, though, if you have an industry that is set up, unless it's a new application, they get grandfathered in, and those rules and regulations don't end up applying to anything that's pre-existing. And so, how that happens, that specific wording, it is the challenging part of this, and that's why when it's considered a new application, it's subject to the new rules. It's a nice, clear-cut define. If there's some nuanced wording that we can work out, that's something that we can, if that's what council wants to do, that's something that as the decision makers, that's your decision to make.
I guess my preference would be that it would be an ongoing requirement to meet or exceed the provincial regulations. So then it wouldn't matter whether it's 5 years or 2 years or 3 or 10, because
Yep.
that's out of our control. So if we can work that out, then is council okay with that?
But how do you know?
Well, the province will come down with regulations. That way there is no grandfather clause. That's what I'm trying to get away from.
So I'm another question. None of this 5-year thing has anything to do with, or does that have anything to do with the amount of power usage, that we'd review that, or is that not part of this at all?
Well, I don't know if, I don't know if this is the concern or not. Is the concern how much, like, we're not looking at taking out anything near what the previous applications have been. I don't remember what the numbers were, but like, we have less power there than we thought we had, which is not an issue for this meeting, but it's something we found out, and it is enough. Like, we can do what we need to do with it.
Can I just ask?
We'd
you're
like
not
to have the potential of having other businesses operate in that building, because we don't need all that square footage and that type of thing. So, but in terms of power, it's not like we're looking for a huge amount of power here. It's actually less than half of what we originally thought there was, and it's likely going to be good for a while anyway, quite a while. Okay, sorry, go ahead.
Which just brings me to the concern of, normally in crypto mining, from what I've understood, is that it requires an awful lot of power. And so
Yeah.
that's where I'm a little bit conflicted.
Yeah.
I don't quite understand how you would function at that capacity with this amount.
So
Do you have plans on supplementing it somewhere? or-
no, there have been applications for a lot of power. I wish I knew those numbers, because then we could kind of compare the two, but I think it was like 10 megawatts or something like that. Or was it,
10,
wasn't it megabytes? Just kidding.
That was my mistake.
Russ, that
I
was,
wasn't gonna say that again.
One joke allowed, right?
Yeah, one joke, that's it for one.
Okay.
And we were-
No, it's all scalable. So you know, people coming from overseas or pooling together large amounts of money for, like, you can go huge for sure, but that's not what we're doing, and it doesn't require that much power.
So if you were to fill that whole building.
Not gonna happen. Not enough money in Winkler.
And not with this amount of power, right?
No,
And so
no.
that, your intention is not to fill the whole building?
No.
Is that correct? Okay.
No, I can't imagine that happening at this point. So,
So in which case your project is scalable, right? Because your intention
the
is.
building is big enough that we could require a lot more power. Yeah, for sure.
That's where my
Yeah.
confusion came in.
In this instance, of course, it is.
Hydro
capital.
wouldn't approve more than 1,500 KVA for this, so they already have that in place. My understanding anyways, and I don't see us going there for crypto alone. It would be nice to have some industry in that building and make use of it and have employees and that kind of stuff, which
Okay.
is certainly on the table.
Okay.
But no, nothing of
Yeah,
that
that changes the
size.
dynamics then, I was
Yeah.
thinking.
No,
Or
this
filling
isn't
every
actually,
corner.
this isn't actually that big of an operation compared to what you've heard of before.
So in terms of scale, Russ, just to help us get a bit of a picture of it, that 500 KVA, how much of that building are you taking up for crypto?
I don't know if I should answer that. I should have had Sheldon here for that, but I'm gonna say it would be like less space than this room.
Okay,
Out of, I don't know how big those buildings are. I think they're somewhere on
quite a bit bigger.
8,000 square feet.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Probably the size of Old City Hall.
Well,
Okay.
that would make sense if you would have your crypto mining and use that heat to heat the rest of the building and
Yeah.
have a manufacturer in there that could make use of that.
Yeah, it can be economical that way. Yeah.
Well, I do appreciate us taking this one step at a time because it makes it much easier for us to
I agree.
understand.
Yeah.
For the 5-year period and the idea of instead tying it to committing to the province of Manitoba's crypto requirements at the time, I think I'd have some comfort with that, and we'd ask Scott to work with you to work the wording out. Personally, I might be more leery of that than the 5 years, because you never know what's going to happen in the province. But if you're comfortable with that, I would feel that we're well covered at that point in time from our point of view.
Yep.
Would you be comfortable with the wording that I think Martin kind of said something about ongoing? Like, would that be also acceptable? Because to us, I think that makes sense. I mean, if Manitoba Hydro turns the light off tomorrow, then we know that's how it is. We have to follow whatever rules they put out.
Yeah. I think I feel more comfortable with that.
The
than a
details of
timeline.
it can be
Yeah.
worked out with
Yeah,
staff.
right.
but
Yeah.
Were there any other concerns from staff that, regarding the 5-year, other than the regulation piece to it? No?
Okay. Okay,
Okay.
are we okay to
Well,
move
I
on?
guess,
Because it's in the resolution, I'll quickly ask you, those wording, and then we
Okay,
can update the.
okay.
I understand that one option you'd have is we could close the public hearing today and then have, instead of approving it today, have the wording worked out before, and vote on it next council meeting. That wasn't that one option that was presented to us?
Well, that was from last meeting to this meeting,
No.
but I'm not sure if dragging it any further would.
Well, it's kind of
necessarily-
interesting making a resolution on something that we've had so much discussion on without the final wording
Oh, but he's gonna come up with some wording.
before we vote.
Scott's gonna work some quick magic here.
Yeah,
I've got it written down already.
see,
See?
Okay,
Okay,
he
well,
moves fast.
good.
okay.
Okay, carry on.
Okay, we'll move on to number 3. So along with the power discrepancy that we learned about on this property, we were not aware of the drainage easement. We talked about this briefly last meeting. We're not opposed to the drainage, but there are some considerations that we have to discuss with either the previous owner or real estate and things like that. We just simply weren't aware of this drainage easement. I did have some discussions with Stephanie about it. The drainage easement does exist. And whether or not it's registered as a result of this or as at a later date, once we've had time to deal with real estate, the end result is the same, and it will happen, and there's no, I don't think there's any need to tie it to this condition, from my understanding, so I would request that that be dealt with separate from this application.
Are you okay with that, Scott, or are you?
You should just move your chair.
So partly, like through the public hearing process or anytime that there's a conditional use variance or rezoning, that's our opportunity to do our due diligence on all of the zoning compliance for a property. Unfortunately, we took that approach in the past and didn't require it be registered at the time of either subdivision or one of these other opportunities. And then following it up 21 years later, the next property owner is surprised by it. So
As he
this,
was.
right, exactly. And so in 10 years or 20 years or 30 years, whenever the property changes hands, that's when the next owner is going to be surprised again. And in our vaults, we'll have this drainage easement that the city will be aware of, but we were never asked about during that exchange. And so this is the opportunity for it to be required to be registered. Otherwise, we don't have, as a city, the opportunity to require this on the property again, unless there is a variance, conditional use, or a rezoning application or subdivision, I guess, as well.
So my question regarding that property then, if it was left in here, we understand that that needs to be registered, so you understand it will be registered. Is there a matter of where your your preference would be, where the drainage would go, that is what needs to be adjusted, or is it currently or where it is currently, it's not registered, it is registered, but it's not.
It's signed, but
It's signed, but it's not
It's signed,
Yeah.
it's in place, and I don't think there's any changes that we've anticipated or proposed.
Okay, so then we could leave it in there and just give you time to.
If we
sort
had
that
more
out.
time for it, that would probably help. I don't know how exactly that process will go. Buying a property without knowing of the agreements made on it can be a fairly significant deal. Not something you ever really want to go through. So to tie it together with this application is a bit of a inconvenience at least. So again, it would be something that I think maybe if there's a time stamp on it, that gives us more time to deal with the appropriate steps coming from the angle we're coming from, not having known that it was existent. That might help a
So that wouldn't
little
really
bit.
jeopardize your opportunity to deal with your previous landowner if there was a registration done now on the drainage, right? I think that's all we're asking for.
I don't think so, but I'm not sure. I know the owner's preference is that they needed some time to deal with the situation.
What kind of time are you thinking, Russ?
The request was to not have it part of this application, so I'm not sure.
But
I think-
But I think
what does that
we can
affect
do
you? It's
some-
not, like, your building isn't in that zone.
No, the building is not in the drainage easement. No, that's right.
So what's your concern then?
The concern is registering an agreement with, I guess maybe it's maybe a bargaining chip or of some sort. I mean, I'd have to make up an example to compare it to something else, but we bought a property that this wasn't disclosed to us, and now we need to have a discussion.
But is that not a separate legal issue between you and the previous landowner, just, hey,
Yes.
you didn't reveal all the details?
Yes,
And I think that's the direction you need to take, and really not interfere with what we're doing here today.
I do
Because it
understand.
wouldn't make any difference.
Yeah, I understand your point, and you may be right. I don't really have anything else to say about that other than that we'd like to.
I just know of another property owner who went and bought this happened to be a lakefront property,
Mhm.
and he had a little boathouse that was on there, and it was built contrary to Manitoba Hydro requirements, and so therefore, when he bought the property, there was all these beautiful pictures of the boathouse. I saw the pictures, there's probably more of that than of the house. And so then all of a sudden you bought it and you realize, hey, Manitoba Hydro has a caveat against here. You have a 5-year termination, this house has to be gone. And so, then you went back to the realtor and whoever sold them the property, and because it was not full disclosure, so.
Yeah.
I think on this aspect of it, I agree this is something we need to clean up. Recognizing though that this is a surprise to you, I wouldn't have a problem with an extended date to give you some more time. But I do believe it does need to be here and we do need to clean it up. So if an additional 90 days helps out, certainly I'm open to that, open to another suggestion as well.
I think
But it
that
would be
would-
nice to be able to clean it up.
I think that would probably help,
Okay.
the 90 days, yeah.
So then we just noted that you got 90 days to get this sorted out, but that the easement will be registered, or caveat will be registered.
So-
Yeah,
Easement.
personally, I agree with that. I hesitate to fully, officially agree with it, because I know the position of the owners, but I understand
Well,
that.
the position of council and our staff is that we need to deal with this.
Yep,
And as Scott indicated, we don't want to deal with it on the next owner of the property.
totally.
So if we look
I
at
under-
that then and say December 31, 22, that
That's
gives
a
them
little
the
too late.
it gives them the additional 90 days from the September 30th request.
I don't know, do we want to
I'd be fine with that.
burden the next council with it? I don't think so. I think we need to deal with this in this council.
Yeah.
So September 30th is a good enough number.
We're less than 90 days already?
It wouldn't burden council, it's strictly an administrative process after the
Okay.
condition.
Okay.
Okay, well, I'm not stuck on it, so to me it wouldn't matter, but just like to get it cleaned up.
Yeah.
With, with council's okay, I would suggest then December 31st, 2022 as the opportunity to get the easement filed.
Why don't you say November 30th, because nothing gets done in December. Honestly, I'm not kidding. Especially if you go to the province, you're not gonna get anything done in
It won't.
December.
At the end of the day, I don't think that this is going to matter, like,
Yeah.
Yeah.
I
No,
don't think
just
it
the date,
matters.
it just,
Just,
there's
I
nothing
support,
magic,
yeah.
Yeah,
so.
Yeah.
I would prefer November 30th.
I agree. Yeah. But on the other hand, you don't know our city staff if you say nothing gets done in December.
That's
Well,
right.
I'm
That's a
saying
good point.
provincially, I'm saying provincially. I'm
You
not-
heard it.
I
You
know
heard it.
full well there's a lot of stuff gets
We
done
know how
by
much
our
you
city
You
guys
got
staff.
December off, Scott, good for you.
Not you guys,
Gotten warmer
not you
here.
guys.
Okay, clear, carry on,
Yeah. So November 30th,
November 30th.
we've decided? Okay. Number 4.
Okay, the last point for discussion here, number 5 is not an issue, so we'll deal with number 4 here. So there's a bylaw that deals with paving, I guess, less used roads that generally wouldn't require the neighbors to partake or request even. I don't know what that bylaw is, but maybe you guys do, I'm not sure. City improvement, something like that. So therefore, I don't think we need to have it as part of this condition. We don't know when or if, or, you know, we don't know what that looks like when somebody would ask to pave that road. It really has nothing to do with cryptocurrency, so this is likely just one of those things that comes along with reviewing a property of what is outstanding. In this case, probably not outstanding, but potentially coming up in the future. I think there's already bylaws in place that deal with this and give us all a way to respond if somebody does request to pave that road in the future. So again, I would like to ask that that be removed from the conditions of this application.
I guess my question would be to you, Scott, is this another one of those cleaning up the things so that we can move ahead?
He's bringing the notebook.
Yeah,
Now we're
because
in
I have my draft condition revised here as well. In terms of the local improvement bylaw is the one you're referring to. The reason for this, and we have put this as a condition on a number of other areas, and it's not necessarily to do with the specific use, but development that is occurring in the area. At some point, if there is going to be a paved road, we want to have that certainty that there's going to be buy-in in terms of the local improvement that's going to occur in the area. So a local improvement, I think, requires 2/3 approval. Is that the right ratio? So from in terms of the property owners in that area, if 1/3 or 1/3 plus one objects to it, then the project won't go forward through a local improvement in that sense. And so in this, again, the city's only opportunities to put conditions on approvals are through variance, conditional use, rezoning, or subdivisions. So these are our opportunities to work through that. That being said, I don't think Monarch is on our radar to be paving anytime soon. I don't think that there's interest from the property owners in that area. Particularly, you guys are not interested in this area, and the other property owners haven't explicitly said we want this road paved now as well either. So whether it's in there or not, I think there could be debatable, but if we want to make sure that there is that caveat in place for us to move a project forward like that, there's that opportunity too. Any other questions on that specific clause, and then I'll give you the proposed revision.
Maybe just for clarification then, it doesn't look like that'll happen anytime soon, but if and when it does happen, you may be the one that would request it. Just simply saying that, you know, the local improvement is how this road is going to be hard surfaced, right? And if Monarch is there and nothing changes with Monarch, obviously you got a decade or more down the road before that'll ever be looked at.
I'm going to give you a quick example that maybe is personal enough for me to bring up this request to take it out. So when we built the Great Canadian Oil Change building, there was a back lane that we proposed to use, and other businesses also used it at the same time, but we were proposing a new or additional use to that back lane. One of the, I think, requirements from the city was to have that back lane paved. And when we asked whose cost that would be, they said it could be all the neighbors. See who you can get to help you with that. Well, that's not very easy, and no one helped us, so we paid for it. In this case, we don't know who's going to request to. I mean, I think Lode King just bought some new property in that area. Triple E has some property, and that could change hands. We're speculating here, and we don't know what the use or when that could happen, and we may not be in a position to need to or want to pay for that road at that time, if it does ever happen. So again, I realize we're talking about something that may not happen for a long enough time that none of us really will ever consider it again. Who knows? But I'd like to make those decisions with the information as it comes up when there is a request for that, rather than agree to doing it now.
Okay.
I guess I'm thinking with that example, it would be good to have this in to protect you in the future if everybody else has to pay the amount. So if you wanted to do it, you wouldn't be the only one stuck with it. It would actually be beneficial
If
if
we're
all
the
of
ones
them have
requesting it, we're willing to deal with that.
Yeah, I'm sure.
In this scenario, again, none of us know what tomorrow looks like. We assume that there's no hurry, but that's not to say that you or Monarch or someone doesn't come along and say, we'd love to do this. That being said, we do want to make sure that we're able to develop in a way that makes sense. So I'll go back to the same piece again. What about if after 5 years an application is made, we wouldn't object? It allows you an opportunity to recoup some investment in terms of what you've done there. But at that point in time, if something else happens and development does look like it, at that point in time, you're able to participate. Would something like that give you any comfort? And maybe I should first ask Scott if something like that is possible.
Yeah, certainly, like, if there's a certain time frame that's put on it, that would be fine. It's certainly not in our 5-year capital plan, so,
Right.
in terms of current projects that have been
So
requested.
would that be okay, Russ?
Change it to if it happens within the first 5 years, I think it makes a lot of sense. Should I go to the mic?
Please.
Scott, don't go away.
I think there's a lot of logic to having that decision made with all the information at hand. And I think I'm gonna stick to that for my request.
Okay,
Thank you.
okay. Any other thoughts?
No, I certainly understand his perspective on the conditions. I'm sure it would have been nice if your neighbors would have had similar clauses, though, when you wanted to pave that back lane to the one that's being proposed here, because then it could have been done through a local improvement from those developments as well. And that's one of the reasons that we're trying to learn from that, so that we're able to appropriate the costs to all of those that do benefit to it. But yeah, I certainly understand the perspective.
Just a comment, I think I like Councillor Seaman's approach to this, to leave it in, but put an extended timeline on it so that it doesn't burden you initially, if it should happen.
So what would we be agreeing to?
That after 5 years, if there was a request made, you wouldn't object to it?
That we would have 5 years to
No.
In the first 5
First 5 years, if somebody came along with a request, you wouldn't need to participate. But if after 5 years, somebody came along and requested it, that you would then not object to it.
So that would just give you time to, as it was said before, to recoup some of your initial capital.
And the details at the time are subject to whatever the details are in 5 years' time, not what we're implying today.
Right.
Well, council
Typically,
maybe,
well, typically a local improvement comes forward, it implies that there's a proponent, one of your neighbors is a proponent. Generally, if the costs are prohibitive, they wouldn't come forward with their piece. So there is an element there. But as you've already alluded to, when you end up in a situation where your neighbor knows that you have to do it or you can't develop, there's absolutely no incentive to participate on their end. They knew in order to develop your project, they didn't have to participate and the lane was going to get paved. As Scott has already alluded to, this brings everyone some protection that if and when this is going to get developed, that all of the neighbors are going to participate equally to get that road that they're all going to benefit from. It does sometimes put you in a position where you're not ready today for it when somebody else wants to do it. That is one piece, and that was kind of what I was hoping to try to build some protections in while you're trying to recoup your initial investment of what you're doing to grow that property, that at that time you're protected from not having to participate. Ultimately, obviously, those kinds of things are your decision, but it is nice when a development happens in a neighborhood that all the neighbors participate.
so what I gather here from our council, at least, that we would be open to defer it for 5 years until that could be done, but leave it there for later.
Okay. And then just in terms of the, and you can let me know if you still object to the clause here, for the 5-year clause for expiry. So subject to comply with any new provincial or federal cryptocurrency mining regulations within 1 year of them coming into effect. So,
I think it's
because we
pretty fair.
recognize that you won't be able to immediately comply with any new regulations. It gives you some time.
So, can you read it one more time?
subject to comply with any new provincial or federal cryptocurrency mining regulations within 1 year of them coming into effect.
Okay, perfect.
Okay, good.
I think that's a very fair solution.
Yep. Okay, are we done, or we still got some more
We'll have to be done soon because there's other people here.
Yeah, they're probably tired of hearing
yeah.
about cryptocurrency.
Or paved roads.
Yes.
On the paved road, is this a new precedent that we can expect to see going forward on any type of conditional use, that if there isn't a paved road, that people have to agree to doing it if other neighbors want it? You know, that's kind of how this one's worded. Is that how
That's
this is
where we
going
wanna
in
get
the
to.
future?
And I would suggest that it's actually not new. We have had it in a number of developments in the last 2 years already, Scott, I think is when we started implementing, specifically on roads that are not paved today. So there are pieces, again, the good neighbor policy that we're really hoping to get to prevent one neighbor from being held hostage by another neighbor, for lack of a better word.
And it's 2/3 agreement, right?
Correct.
2/3 proponent. Well, I don't think we'd ever be 2/3 out of our property, so we're kind of just agreeing to do whatever they want, whenever they want.
1/3 opposition
Yeah,
slows it down as well, right? 1/3 plus 1, as Scott said, we need 2/3 agreement to move forward.
I think we're a quarter.
so you only got one neighbor to convince.
That's all Triple E.
Oh,
Or Load King. And we have no issues with them. I mean,
okay,
that's not the issue, but
Yeah.
who knows who will change hands or what will happen. I mean, they just bought one of those properties. I don't even know if that's done yet, but.
okay,
So
Well, I
that's
imagine-
a challenge for us to put us in a position now without knowing when or what that'll be.
but you know it won't be for 5 years, so,
Yeah.
okay. All right. Any other questions from council, or any final words from Scott?
I'm good.
Okay. Thank you, Russ. Be it resolved that council approve the conditional use number CU 2022-003, subject to the following terms and conditions. And I'm not sure if they're all updated here.
You're gonna
We
close it
first-
first,
We have to
right?
close the hearing.
Or, sorry, okay, yes, no, that's right. Okay. Be it resolved, the public hearing for conditional use number CU 2022-003 be closed. Mover,
Marvin?
seconder,
Karina?
Karina, thank you. All in favor? And that is carried. Okay, this is the one that I need to ask about then. Be it resolved that council approve the conditional use number CU 2022-003, subject to the following conditions. The applicant provide written confirmation from Manitoba Hydro and the city confirming Manitoba Hydro has available capacity for the proposed power use based on Winkler's continued typical industrial growth. Additionally, that the applicant provide written confirmation from Manitoba Hydro and the city confirming that Manitoba Hydro has available capacity, I think some of that already has been done, for any future service upgrades based on Winkler's continued typical industrial growth, subject to comply with any new provincial or federal cryptocurrency regulations within 1 year of them coming into effect, that the owner registered drainage easement untitled by, and that would now be November 30th instead of September 30th, that the owner of 355 Monarch Drive not object to the paving of Monarch Drive if constructed in the future by local improvement bylaw after 5 years. Or, yeah, after the first 5 years. An occupancy permit from MSCW. So, you got those changes? Noted? Okay, with that, mover,
Henry Siemens?
seconder,
Don?
any last comments or questions? Time for the vote. All in favor?
I'll abstain.
Okay. Thanks, Andrew. So noted. Andrew abstained, and the rest of council unanimously approved.
I would again like to thank our staff and the proponent for working very diligently to come to a solution that mostly makes sense. And I think, as in most negotiations, if each group is a little tiny bit unhappy, we've probably arrived at the best possible scenario. I think we've done a good job here, Scott, through your leadership and making sure that we're looked after here. And I certainly believe, Russ, that you came to the table to try to make this thing work and to work with us to get there. And I thank you both for that.
Yep, thanks,
Awesome.
Russ.
Appreciate it, Henry.
Thank you.
All right, the next one, combined public hearing, conditional use number 2, CU 2022-004, and variation VA 2022-20-276 7th Street.
Let us continue. So this is a public hearing for, just like as mentioned already, conditional use and the variance. Application number is CU 2022-004, and the variance application number is VA 2022-020. The request is in order to allow a third dwelling unit, as well as in order to use third unit as a short-term rental. The subject is a third dwelling unit is a conditional use in the R1 residential lower density zone, and as well as a short-term rental is a conditional use in the R1 zone. The purpose is to add a third unit as a short-term rental. The variance requested is, the first one is to reduce the required number of on-site parking stalls from 6 stalls to 4 stalls, as well as to increase dwelling units per acre from 7 to 12.71 in the R1 zone. This is at 276 7th Street. The applicant, as well as the owner, is Joshua Shetter, and he is present here as well. So if you would like to speak to your application, please feel free to do so.
Yes, thank you. If you looked at the report, as he said, I'm the owner of 276 7th Street. If you looked at the report, there are a lot of reasons that the planning committee recommended against it, and I think there are ways to work through some of those. The thing that I would not want to do, though, is to continue over the objections of my neighbors, and so I don't know if Mark or Don Sawatsky is here. Doesn't appear so.
Right, I forgot to mention one thing. We did receive objections.
Oh, okay.
One thing I
Yes.
forgot to mention.
Yes, and I've talked to them. When I initially put the application in, I didn't think there'd be any objections or anyone really care, but in talking to them, they're the ones who share the duplex, they're the owners of the other side. In talking to him, I think he had some reasonable objections, and especially in the short-term rental. So I'm willing to say, you know what, I understand on that. The transient nature of the people who will be coming in, some of the comfort and maybe safety of the people that are renting on his side, I understand. So as of right now, I'm willing to withdraw that on the short-term part. And I was hoping that him or his brother would be here tonight, that way we can work through some of the long-term concerns. Because I really, even if the council approves it, I'd rather not do it against his objections. I don't know that they'd be a good neighbor, to use your word earlier. So since he's not here, we can't talk through some of those. I think there are some of his concerns can be mitigated. One of them putting a fence in the backyard. The backyard is kind of shared. There's a hedge that divides them, but we can put a fence. We could talk through some conditions for, or talking about how stringent our process is in approving the people who rent there, to make sure that they're as far as danger to his side, things like that. I think those things could be talked through possibly, but I understand some of the other things as far as density. That's up to y'all. I don't know about all that density math and stuff. The planning committee, she showed me the math, I still don't understand it, but that's your category.
It's okay, they had to explain it to us twice.
Okay. Yeah, so as far as the short-term rental, I say we take that off the table, and the long-term rental, even if y'all approve it, I'd have a hard time going over his objections, so I'd still want to talk to them, see, can we work through this? Can we come to an understanding? Maybe it opens the door for them to do it on their side. I don't know as far as the density, maybe not, but that's all I have for now.
Yep. So the question that I would have is, just like we did last council meeting, we kept the hearing open for the next council meeting.
Okay.
And perhaps that would give you some time to talk to Mark,
Okay.
and even bring him to the next council meeting, or have a joint this has been resolved, that's been resolved, that's been resolved. I think that's what you're trying to do, and certainly
that.
appreciate that. I think my recommendation would that we keep this application open till the next council meeting, gives you 2 more weeks to
Okay.
discuss it with your neighbors and come up with a joint solution. If
That
that's
sounds
okay
good.
with council?
Scott had something to
Okay,
add.
Scott, go ahead.
So I'm not sure if council had the opportunity to read through the objection that was attached. They did also object formally to added long-term rental option there as well, so I'm not sure if you had since had
Sorry, I
a,
didn't make that clear, yeah.
okay.
They did object to the long-term and the short-term, but I thought there was, the problem here is there's partners, and I talked to one partner, and he seemed disposed to working through some of those issues. Then he talked to the other partner, and he was less disposed, so I thought, well, maybe we could work through, get both partners together, and we can talk through some of those things. And if they are dead set against it, that's fine. I mean, I don't wanna run over anybody in the pursuit of money
Okay.
or whatever, so.
Okay, so then it's still fair to leave it open for 2 weeks for you to deal with some of those issues to find if you can find a resolution?
I like that.
Okay,
So,
And if they still say no, then I say no.
yep,
I got a question as far, like to Scott, like we've got a density issue that needs to be clarified as well.
So it's not so much the density itself that's the issue, it's the built form, the house that already exists there doesn't allow for more parking to exist for that density. So they're not able to meet the bylaw, or the current property isn't able to meet the current bylaw requirements in terms of parking. And in terms of developments that are occurring outside of our downtown kind of development area identified in the MSTW development plan, it's always been a requirement to at least meet the minimum parking requirements that are outlined in the zoning bylaw. So if it was a greenfield build, rearranging the building on the site likely could make for added density so that you can accommodate added parking for, at least to meet the minimum zoning bylaw requirements.
Just a couple of things in response to that. Of course, he's right, so just something to consider. I think we're a block or two off of that downtown area. And also on our street, there's some paved, on the other side of the road, so there's some paved next to the church. So there's a little extra, so the cars, if they parked over there, would not be on the street. They would be on the city paved property next to the street. So that helps a little bit as far as parking. In fact, no one really ever uses it until Sunday morning, and when the church, Bergthaler Church meets. And so, yeah, there's some room there for that.
okay. Well, I think we need some more information, so I think the postponement for 2 weeks, if that's okay by council,
It's good with me.
and that's what I would recommend, and we deal with it in 2 weeks' time.
Okay, thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I think for clarification, the other owners did state that they were not able to meet, to come tonight, so they didn't forget or anything like that, that they made that point. So,
Okay,
so we need a resolution then to recess this.
yes.
I
So-
can make that.
Okay, Marvin moved that we resolve to defer
Recess.
or recess this
Recess.
hearing until whatever the date is in the next,
On June 14th.
June
will be the
14th
next
council
one.
meeting. Okay, we have a mover, seconder. Don, thank you. And all in favor? And that is carried. We'll take it up in 2 weeks' time,
3 weeks' time.
or 3 weeks.
It will be
Yes,
3
it
weeks
is
now.
3 weeks' time now. Be it resolved, this public hearing for conditional use number CU 2022-4 and variation VA 2022-20 be closed. Mover? Or not closed,
closed.
no.
Recess.
Reset, and we've done.
Recess to.
We did that already, yep.
Yep.
We
Yeah,
did
we
that.
did that already, so we don't
Okay.
have to elect. Okay.
Okay, just that we don't want to close this. So be recessed, okay. All in favor? And that is carried.
So now we move on with our next public hearing. This is also a combined public hearing for rezoning And the rezoning application number is RZ 2022-012, as well as for variance, and the variance application number is 2022-019. The address is 115 Main Street South, and the rezoning is from R1 residential lower density to R2 residential medium density. And the purpose for the variance is a construction of a 9-plex multi-unit dwelling on a 0.5 acre site. The variance requested is to increase the maximum gross density in the proposed R2 zone from 15 dwelling units per acre to 18 dwelling units per acre. And it's at, like I mentioned already, at 115 Main Street South. The applicant as well as the owner is Glenberg Homes and Design Limited. And Semberg is here to speak on behalf of his application. If you would like to step forward, you can do so. We did not receive any objections for this application, and there's a council report attached to this public hearing as well. Please.
Okay,
Thank you.
welcome here, Sam.
Thank you. So I was at the lumberyard the other day with my worker, and he says, wow, OSB is still a lot of money. And I says, what do you mean? It's only $40. It's half price, right? So from a year ago, it was over 80, so now we're at 40. But I guess where I'm getting to with this little muse is that cost of building is very, very high, and cost of land continues to go up. And so naturally, as developers start looking at how do we make these projects affordable, how do we make them attractive, how do we make infill property attractive? And unfortunately, the only way to do it is to start looking at different levels of density. And so that's kind of the thinking behind what we did here with this project, and the reason why we're requesting the 9 as opposed to 7 or 6 or anything else. We just felt this property would really support that. And in conversation with our neighbors, and made connection with many of them, and we had a little coffee night, and we discussed all the pros and cons of it, and and so we came up with multiple options for some parking, and we heard some of the other things that came up after the application went in as well. And Stephanie's been in contact with us on a number of those things, like, you know, smelly garbage, let's have covers on the garbage bins. Let's make sure that side fences are projecting far enough forward so that children in neighboring yards aren't going to run into the driveways, that sort of thing. So there's been a number of those types of objections, or maybe not objections, but more so just questions. Could we do these things to be a good neighbor? And those are things that we've remained committed to and will continue, so.
Okay. Thanks, Sam. Just on a side note, I mean, the duplex or fourplex, whatever that you built down the street, very attractive. And that's one of the things about infill. You know, people look a lot of times at the density, but don't look at the condition of the existing dwellings that are there and how deteriorated they are. And to add a nice new feature on the street, it enhances it. And so just wanted to say thanks for the one that you invested in here. And
as you can see, this one has the same flavor.
yes, yes it does. So in this particular style, are there 3 levels of suites, basement, main floor, and upstairs?
That's right. The 2 front doors on each one of those buildings represents a main floor entry and a second floor entry.
Right.
And the basement entries are all from the rear,
Oh, okay. Okay.
just like the West Suite one.
Yeah. Okay. Any questions of council?
Not yet.
Well, we don't have anybody here objecting, so you'll have to speak.
Do we?
I think there are
Oh, you
people
are,
here
oh,
that
I'm
might
sorry,
wanna
okay.
speak.
Okay, sorry. Yeah.
I just want to make a comment. Hi, my name's Barry Russell, 16 Durham Crescent, but I'm here as the chair of the Pine Tree Court Residents Condo Board.
Okay.
So we met with Sam that night, and yeah, there is some concern about the level of traffic that's going to be coming out of this unit. There was some comments of, instead of 3 units, would it not be more sensible to be 2 units? And that instead of nine residencies, it would be 6, just based on the number of cars that would be coming out there. We're replacing a single family dwelling that would have 1 or 2 cars with a an entrance quite close to Main Street Junction with, you know, quite an increased number of cars. Now, we love the idea of the infill. I mean, you just need to take a drive down Main Street South, and we can all agree there's some improvements to be made there. As a side note, I think we could apply the bylaws a little bit more strictly. Just a little bit of comment there, some sofas and derelict buildings that could do with a tidy up. But yeah, in principle, we're not objecting as neighbours. We see Sam's buildings, they look really nice. But just, it's a bit of a concern with the number of cars that will be on the street. I'm assuming this won't be the last development on Main Street South. I'm sure that the people in this room will be quite encouraged by this development. They'll want more. Okay, so there's going to be 15 cars coming out of Sam's development. There's one, then there may be one across the road, one a couple of 100 yards down there. Before all of a sudden, there's going to be a very increased number of traffic coming out Main Street South onto that junction. So yeah, just a concern from the elderly residents of Pine Tree Court, and I know there's some families that are close by that, you know, it is a concern. So that was just something I'd like to bring up, that hopefully this is not the last development, but we have to be cognizant of the fact that it's going to increase a lot of traffic down that road. So, unless, now this young man's one of the neighbours, so I don't know if he's got anything to say.
Not really, no.
You good?
Thanks for coming and listening. So maybe, Scott, if you want to address the traffic a little bit, and as you say, we certainly understand, realize that there's going to be more traffic. And in regards to Pine Tree, I mean, one of the concerns that have been expressed to us as council is the location of the parking in proximity to their exit. So those are just some of the things that I'm already aware of from that perspective, but
So in terms of traffic on Main Street South itself, the density would be consistent with some of the other developments that have occurred in the area. Other ones would be like Woodlands Estates further south. It follows our infill guidelines relatively closely in terms of the densities there. It is a little bit above, hence the variance for going from 15 to 18. Also noting that the proposed development meets all of the zoning bylaw requirements in terms of off-street parking as well. And I think there's also an option to increase the amount of parking while not required or being presented as a requirement from the planning department because they are already meeting the minimum requirements for the zoning bylaw there as well. So
okay.
Recognizing, yes, traffic will go up, but generally that will, the low density nature of those neighborhoods already have very relatively low amounts of traffic, and Main Street, if it would have continued, would have been, it would have been nice, but it ended up not. And so a lot of that Main Street traffic is kind of pushed off to other streets as well.
Sorry, I forgot to mention, one thing that was very, very important to the residents was the trees. That was brought out, and Sam, we had a good conversation about the trees. Sam's going to do his best to maintain the trees in and around. I mean, part of the attraction for the residents of the Pine Tree Court is they've got some lovely mature trees, right? It's almost like a park back there, and a lot of them don't want to see trees knocked down for the sake of progress, you know. You close your eyes in Winkler and there's 40 acres of trees disappear overnight, so we don't want that, right? So,
Agreed.
yeah, appreciate that, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Sam, do you want to address a couple of those issues in regards to the tree question, and the other one that was here was in regards to the fire hydrant, right?
It was one of the conditions
Yes.
as we went.
Okay.
Yeah, as far as the trees go, I'm a big fan of trees. I won't tell the long, arduous story that we went through at 375 Thornhill and Morden when we did that and what we did to protect those trees. And that was by our initiative. We wanted to make sure that that was protected and kept healthy. And so that would be the same here. Our goal is to retain as many of them as possible. Yeah, as far as some of the conditions, I guess, that were set out for us, I guess I'm one of those guys that assumes that if that's what they are, then that's what they are, and I try to be easy to get along with. My first response to maybe the sidewalk, my contribution to a sidewalk that already lies there and has been there for a period of time, that caused me some pause, for sure. But when I saw on the document that I think it's $246 or something, I thought, you know, it's not really worth mentioning. If we're talking about $10,000 worth of contribution for a sidewalk that had been already built and lying there, I would really question that kind of a method, to be honest, but we are where we are, and that's fine. I don't think there's anything else in the requirements that I'm concerned about.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah.
I think, as you said before, there'd be 8 sheets of plywood or whatever. Okay, any other questions? Hearing none, be it resolved that public hearing for rezoning CU 2022-12 and variation VA 2022-019 be closed. Mover?
Don.
Seconder?
Andrew?
Any final comments? Hearing none, all in favor? That's carried. Be it resolved that bylaw number 2284-22 be given second reading. Mover?
Michael?
Seconder?
Karina?
And all in favor? That is carried. Be it resolved that bylaw number 2284-22 be given third reading, subject to a development agreement. Terms and conditions of the required development agreement will be in accordance to the recommendations made in the city's report to council. Mover?
Henry Siemens?
Henry and Marvin. Any further questions? Hearing none, all in favor? That is carried. Be it resolved that council approve variation number VA 2022-19, subject to a development agreement. Terms and conditions of the required development agreement will be in accordance with the recommendations made in the city's report to council. Mover?
Henry Siemens?
Seconder?
Don.
Thank you. And all in favor? And that is carried. Okay, next public hearing?
Now we're moving on to our last public hearing of today's meeting. It's again a combined public hearing for a conditional use as well as for a variance. The application number for the conditional use is CU 2022-006, and the variance application number is VA 2022-021. The request is in order to reconstruct the 18-unit commercial condominium as a planned unit development. The subject is a planned unit development as a conditional use in the M industrial zone. The variance requested are to reduce the required site area for a planned unit development from 3 acres to 1.51 acres, as well as to reduce the required rear yard from 20 feet to 18 feet. This is at 850 Roblin Boulevard East. The applicant, as well as the owner, is Capital Building Systems. And we have not received any objections. It has been advertised, and we have not received any objections. And I am not sure if the owner is here.
I don't see
Someone from Capital Building Systems here to speak on behalf of their application, or if someone else wants to speak on behalf of the application, now would be time to do so.
So my understanding is this is the piece of land that he's previously bought from us, and now he's just condominiumizing his intentions.
That is correct, yes.
All right, thank you. No objections? Any comments from council?
I thought we wanted to avoid this. We wanted businesses to be built here instead of just rental units.
The one that I think that we turned down was another piece that is right on Eastview Drive. This one isn't on Eastview Drive, it's the next piece.
Yeah. Yeah, we let some go and then we approve some others, or approve some and disapprove some, have we not?
Well, we disapproved the ones along Eastview because
Right.
those were the
Right,
ones that
but we didn't want any in Clover Creek, wasn't that what we said initially?
Oh, that's what majority of the stuff is there.
Right, that's what yeah. Okay.
I know that we've had a number of conversations around this, and we had at one point in time had some discussions in terms of what some of these condos may need to look like and some of the conditions that we put on them to make sure that we know what's going to happen in them, so that we're not putting a cold storage unit and then we end up having a shop there. So those types of changes we have made over the course of the last several years. We've seen quite a few of these. At various times, we have definitely had some concern around them. I also know that as we've gone forward, we've kind of had a tendency to look at them knowing that a lot of them are becoming truck condos, for lack of a better word, where we actually see the benefit of them coming off our residential streets. So it's, I know when we've had these conversations, they've been difficult conversations at times, because the key for Clover Creek was industrial lands for employment. And this ends up in many ways being,
That was initially our Clover Creek mandate, was it not?
it was.
Okay.
So it's, the example of the diagram they have, is that going to be each building with, that each unit will have what looks like a two-story office type thing? Is that, or is it just one possible drug concept?
Those are all gonna look the same, right?
I guess you're asking me.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I would ask Capitol Building, but
Yeah, so my understanding is that it's just the window placement. It's not that there's a second level. At least I haven't seen floor plans that would indicate that there would be a mezzanine in there, but there may be. It's just not attached in these documents, so I haven't necessarily specifically seen that.
Okay, so that would come when he does his building permit, is when you'd see that.
Yes. And not that there would specifically be any concerns with
With that.
mezzanine in there, as long as they have the appropriate drawings to, and engineering completed for mezzanine.
no, for me, it would be more of, if they have that, that could be a possible opportunity for business. If it's just 3 stalls and that's it, that would be more of a parking spot. So that, to me, it would be an advantage to have this, if each of those had that, and possibly a 2-story could lend itself to a business operating out of there.
So the other thing I think in this particular case we need to remember is his intent has never changed of what he wanted to build on there. That approval was there when we sold him the land. And the fact that he's condominiumizing it now is the only thing that's at question, because the intent to build shops there was there all along.
Right, I think I expressed my concern back then too, but.
If I remember
So
correctly,
noted.
yes, you did.
Okay? Therefore be it resolved, this public hearing for conditional use number CU 2022-006 and variation number VA 2022-021 be closed. Mover?
Karina.
Seconder?
Michael?
Thank you. All in favor? And that is carried. Therefore be it resolved that council approve the conditional use number CU 2022-006, subject to each owner obtaining appropriate occupancy permits from MSTW. Mover?
Henry Siemens?
Seconder?
Don?
Any further discussion?
Just one other key piece, and I think this is one of the items that we were particularly concerned about, Andrew, was making sure that we knew what was in there. And this is one of the ways that we're hoping to address that, by making sure that the appropriate occupancy permit is taken. Hopefully that allows us to.
What's that gonna change though? It's still gonna be it's still gonna be opposite of what our Clover Creek mandate was.
What it does do, though, is it no longer creates shops in cold storage buildings, so that we have a safety factor at least looked at.
Fair?
All right, ready for the question? All in favor? Opposed?
I don't know if I'm opposed or abstain, but
Okay, Well
I'll
noted.
abstain.
We'll abstain, we'll note that. And that is carried. Be it resolved that public hearings be adjourned and regular council reconvene. Mover?
I think we have to do the variation as well, Mark.
Up, variation, sorry, I missed that. Be it resolved that council approve minor variation number VA 2022-21, subject to each owner obtaining appropriate occupancy permits of MSCW. Mover?
Henry Siemens?
Seconder?
Vaughn?
All in favor? Carried.
I'll abstain again there.
Be it resolved that public hearings be adjourned and regular council reconvene. Mover?
Michael?
Sorry, just a correction, it's not just the minor variation, it's also the parcel size, for the plan unit development. The resolution, I just caught it, was incorrect.
Okay.
Minor resolutions actually don't need a resolution from council, I can approve those.
Okay. Okay.
It's the, 1.5,
Right.
acres.
Right.
For the plan unit development, the major
Right.
variation, in the application.
Okay, so noted.
And apologies there.
Okay, appreciate it. Be it resolved that we adjourn the public hearings, be adjourned and regular council reconvene. Did I have a mover and a seconder? on that
Andrew?
one? Andrew, thank you. Seconder?
Michael?
Grena. Oh,
Okay,
Give it to
thanks,
Grenier.
Michael. All in favor? And that is carried. Okay, be it resolved, this meeting of council be adjourned. Mover?
You want to have questions from media?
There's only one media there, so.
Or
She can
public?
ask questions.
she can ask
All right,
questions, she can do
did you,
whatever she
did you
wants.
ask, do you have any questions? Okay, all right,
Thanks,
thank
Pat.
you. All in favor? And that's carried. Do we have a mover in a second? Yeah, we did, okay. All right, thanks for coming.